Finance Minister Tito Mboweni says benefits and compensation of public sector workers will be slashed. For more reaction on this, we're joined by Labour expert Professor Hugo Pienaar. He is from the law firm Dekker Hofmeyr. You were listening to that conversation. Are you satisfied with the response in as far as the management of the public sector wage bill?
Well, isn't that exactly the problem we face, is that we need a social accord where we need the three parties, business, labour and government, to come together and find a solution. But of course the reality is we're overstaffed in the public sector. The other reality is that we've seen in other countries experiencing slow growth or no growth, they've implemented similar measures with sometimes great success. So undoubtedly we have to do that. All parties have to make sacrifices, and it would be interesting to see how the private sector would react to this. But in principle, of course, this must happen. The question is, can it happen, and what are the obstacles? And I can touch on that for you briefly.
Prof, we've almost had a test run on this process. There was a time when the Minister of Finance said, I think working in conjunction with the Minister of Public Service and Administration, to try and encourage the old public servants whose age is that of retirement anyway, to say, come forward, let's give you your severance packages and you walk away, in order to try and reconfigure it, which was the wording they used at the time, to try and reconfigure the public service. It hasn't worked.
No, and of course those are only one of the measures that they can or should implement. But of course any retrenchment has a huge impact on any employer's cash flow. And the same with government. We know that we're cash strapped. Can we really afford it? Can we afford to pay those severance packages? And probably not. But I mean, we also deal with principles. If you want to change somebody's conditions of employment, the remuneration forms part of that. In principle, you can't do that unilaterally. The second thing is that we have these wage agreements still running for the next 2 or 3 years. And those are collective agreements. So what are we going to do? Are we looking at wage freezes? Are we looking at moratorium on appointments? Of course we should do that. Apply attrition. But in principle, there's no right to an increase. But of course, here we have it captured in collective agreements. And those are the difficulties the Minister will face.
Prof, you've got to talk to us about the implications of this, the implications of a national debt that is ballooning and a wage bill that doesn't look like it is going to be going down anytime soon. The Minister is merely talking about freezing the salary levels at where they are at the moment.
Yes.
Well, the implications of this for the country.
Well, let's look at what happened at the time when those increases were granted. This is what the media briefing said at the time. He said, the agreement commits government to amounts that significantly exceed the resources made available for compensation of employees in the 2018 budget. So despite that, they proceeded. So where we're at the moment is really the history that has brought us here. And now we need to be brave. And again, we must remember who's going to make sacrifices. In the private sector, I've seen several companies where management has not taken increases over a period of time now. But we still have the wage increases, and of course you can't have an exploitation of labour. We have the lower paid employees already providing for 10 or more dependents, so it's not an easy call. But ultimately, where you see their countries have done this successfully and addressed it, where there was a proper social accord, unless those three parties get together and make this work, the Minister and including Mr. Mboweni, they're all bound by those collective agreements. And it's an extremely difficult task ahead. But we need to be brave, and we need to say either we make sacrifices. The current system is certainly not working. Mr. Mboweni said that. Moratoriums on appointments and wage freezes will not do it. We need to do more than that.
Professor Hugo Pienaar, thank you very much for making the time to come and speak to us here. He is a labour law expert from law firm Dekker Hofmeyr.